really excited about this. Of course, playing soon in the American Century Championship at Tahoe on NBC is John Smoltz. John is in the car. I see. John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm in transition of just got back from Scotland, greatest probably golf trip I've ever had. I'm getting ready to go do the game this weekend in Houston, then the All-Star game, and then American Century Championship. That is the goal, the dream, bucket list, you name it. I'm running out of time to win that thing, so this has got to be it soon, or we're in trouble.
John, did you play golf in Scotland, and how late did you play? Could you play like midnight golf?
Oh man, I'm telling you right now, I don't know what my expectation level was, but whatever it was, it exceeded it about 5 to 10 times. We experienced everything. Paid our dues when we got there. Tremendous rain and wind at Turnberry the first 54 holes. Then we got a nice couple days. Then we got the end of the trip, 35-mile-an-hour winds, sunny. Yeah, you could play till about 10 o'clock at night, and it is, for golfers, I had always heard it is the Mecca. It is everything, and I was blown away.
John, there's one thing I used to say when I was on the Dan Patrick Show to Dan that would make him more mad than anything. I'd watch the British Open. I'd say, those fairways are so wide. I could hit the fairway every time and dominate this course.
He's got no shot, Smoltzy. Come on, tell him how it is.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. When I played Turnberry, I could remember watching the tournament, right, and seeing the scores on the front nine and go, what happened? Did they forget how to play on the back nine? I mean, what happened to the scores? Well, my first time playing it, 2 under through 8. I'm going, here we go. This is going to be a great day. I bogeyed 9 of the last 10 holes into the wind to finish the deal. And I totally got it. I understood when that wind blows and it turns, you got no chance. I don't care how great a golfer you are.
What's your handicap these days?
It just got back to about +1. I had hip replacement 4 months ago, and I feel like I'm starting to play really, really well. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to have hip replacement after Tahoe to complete the deal. 2 for 1. Get it done, and then be bionic and ready to go again.
Talking to John Smoltz, of course, Fox Sports. Next week we'll call the All-Star game. So, John, Shohei Ohtani last night was diagnosed with a blister, taken out in the 6th inning. Probably will not pitch in the All-Star game. Is this anything to worry about? And I know he had a nail problem before as well.
Yeah, you just don't want this to linger. You don't want it to translate into an elbow, shoulder. Believe it or not, if you got a blister and you're altering your way you throw, you can translate that into other things. So that's why pitchers get a lot of grievance, a lot of, you guys aren't tough because you can't pitch with a blister. Well, you really can't, and there's a reason for it. And they'll be cautious with him. It's unfortunate. It looks like he won't pitch. I wanted to see the whole deal, the whole show, the greatest player and the greatest freak on earth. But, they're doing the right thing. And when you have a cracked nail and you have that kind of stress on your finger, it does turn into a blister, and you just don't want that to last and be lingering.
The Hall of Famer John Smoltz here with us. So the Angels are 4 games out of that final wild card spot. Now Trout's going to be out for an extended amount of time. Ohtani's a free agent at the end of the year. Is it time for the Angels maybe to get as much back, or would you just ride this through and hope to get a chance to re-sign him in the offseason?
I'm telling you, man, to play that kind of GM right now, look, a year and a half ago, I kind of talked about this as everyone was kind of questioning the same thing. They were like, well, what's going to happen? Can they re-sign him? They're not going to the playoffs. It's a franchise changer. A year and a half ago, you could have got a boatload. You could have got 6 players. You could have changed your franchise for the future if you knew you weren't going to re-sign him. And the same holds true now. It's not as great of a package you're going to get unless that team you're trading him to has the ability to re-sign him come free agent. So that's what you're looking for. I would be listening to everything, because if they can't, or if it's not in the cards to re-sign him, why wouldn't you? I mean, I know they want to get in the playoff, but things change when Mike Trout gets hurt. When he's out 8 weeks, things change. You can't guarantee that this team's going to be in the mix in 8 weeks from now. And so there's going to be a point where if it's out there, and I'm talking about teams not trying to cherry pick Ohtani for a half a season or less. I'm talking about making a significant franchise move and getting the most you can. Why wouldn't you consider that if you're the Angels?
John, if they did trade him, or even if he resigns there for, say, some outrageous number like $600 million, which I think if anyone's worth it, it's him. You know, we were talking about a blister on his right finger. A lot of people yesterday are like, oh, no, is this something more serious? Do you think the team that signed him would consider phasing out one of the duties that he has, maybe eventually moving him to just hitter and not pitcher? Or do you have to ride the two things he can do as long as you can?
I think you got to ride it as long as you can. And I think the intriguing part's going to be what the contract ties to in the future, right? X amount if he does both for the next 5 to 7 years, and then if he transitions into, oh, by the way, just a great hitter, then, the contract reads. I don't know how they're going to do that, but to think he's going to do this for the next 10 years is a little much. And I would be a little bit on the side of wanting to see him do this for the next 5 years. But if you're going to make a trade and get a player like this, think about what you're doing. You're getting a top flight, front of the end rotation starter, and your cleanup hitter. Like you just don't get that in one player. And what you would have to give up would be such a prospect basis to kind of be equivalent of. You're never going to replace. You couldn't think of two players right now that isn't named Mike Trout that you would make a trade straight up for in Shohei Ohtani. Even as great as Acuna is with the Atlanta Braves, you wouldn't make that trade straight up if you're the Angels. And if they're Braves, you'd think about it, but you'd have to get two players, two studs, to kind of combat what he can do because he's only taken one roster spot.
Part of me, John, if I was an Angel fan, I would rather get nothing back and make my best pitch to him at the end of this season than trade him right now, just really because he's one of one and we've never seen him before.
Well, I agree about that. I mean, if you think you can re-sign him, and you could, but here's the deal: like they've had the best player on the universe, Mike Trout, until the best player in the universe came over in Shohei Ohtani. So they've had the two best players, and they haven't been able to showcase any of them in the postseason. So at some point, the roster manipulation or the roster limitation that it would take for a franchise. That's got to be weighed. You got to figure out, how do I sign a guy like him, but then how do I also put a roster together that gets me a chance to be in the playoffs and utilize his greatness.
We're talking to John Smoltz, Hall of Famer. He'll be competing in the American Century Championship at Tahoe, July 16th, live coverage on NBC. One of the people who always, I believe, goes every year to Tahoe is Aaron Rodgers, the new Jets quarterback. He seems, of all the athletes, really, really into it. Although this year he's been distracted by all the stuff in New York. Are you looking forward to talking to Aaron? Because it seems to me that he's pretty serious about golf.
He is. There's so much that surrounds, obviously, his greatness on the football field. And now there's going to be so much surrounding him on a new team in a Mecca city and expectations through the roof. So, he has flashes of where he really puts together some good rounds. And I think that, with all that has been taking place this year, I don't know how distracted and how much he's been able to kind of put into golf. I'll tell you one guy that probably wishes he was distracted every year. It seems like when Steph Curry comes in, he's at the end of a run and he doesn't have much time to get ready. Well, they got bounced, unfortunately, early enough to where I think his game might showcase some of that.
Well, he was in the match recently. I don't know if you saw the most recent match. He looked pretty good. Who's the biggest competition, John? I know you're going to take it down this year before your hip replacement. Who are you most worried about?
Tony Romo, Marty Fish, Mark Mulder, Hanukkah. I mean, it's look, I don't make no – look, I got to find a way to go in and just be bored because I go in too excited. I'm fired up. And I get there, I'm like, let's go on the – I look at the scoreboard. I'm like, I want to be on that top 5, top 4. I want to be in the last group. But I'm gonna take it down a notch. And here's my new philosophy, which is now philosophy number 13 coming into this year, is birdies and bogeys. I don't even care about pars. I really don't, because the Stableford format, I set the record. I think the tournament record for most pars in a tournament. It gets you nothing. It gets you a top 7, top 8. But that's not what we're here for anymore. We got to go for the gusto. These guys are younger; they hit it farther, and I'm just gonna have to use my experience. I think that's the only thing I got going for me.
John, I'm going to put you on the spot here because you're a Hall of Fame pitcher, right? We know the elite level that you competed at for so many years. My co-host, Andrew Perloff, was saying earlier that Joey Chestnut is an athlete, the competitive eater. I don't think he is. So we'll ask you, is Joey Chestnut, in your mind, an athlete?
I don't see how.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's competition. I told Zach, if it makes ESPN, isn't it a sport? Because it's on ESPN.
Well, I'll give you that. I mean, it is technically considered a sport. I haven't seen Joey Chestnut do anything else other than eating hot dogs, so he's the best and the greatest, and bow down to him. I don't know that that translates into an athletic accomplishment, but having said that, nobody's beaten him. So, you know, I don't know what he does leading up into, you know, this kind of competition. I don't even want to think about it. But maybe he becomes an athlete after he wins it to get all those carbs and hot dogs and, you know.
Well,
maybe that's when he becomes the athlete.
Maybe he'll show up at Tahoe one year at the American Century Championship. John, real quick, last week we got in a little bit of trouble. We had a list of the top 25 athletes since 2000, and we actually put Clayton Kershaw ahead of Mike Trout because of the postseason success. So this is athletes since the year 2000. If you had to order those two guys, who would you put first as the most accomplished of this century?
Well, I mean, in fairness, I see what you're saying there. In fairness, Kershaw's done it longer.
Yeah. And
he's been super consistent, and there has never been a lag. You could say the same thing, obviously, for Mike Trout, but he's been hurt a lot. Kershaw lately has been, missing some time. But I think that's part of the equation. It's not fair, unfortunately, for Mike Trout that he can't get to the postseason. It's a team sport, and being able to compete and do that, we all want to do that. I think whenever you're talking about pitchers to position players, it's not a fair conversation unless you're talking about an elite pitcher that has an impact that Clayton Kershaw has had in his organization. But when it's pitcher to position player, the pitcher's going to lose every single time. And I get it as a former pitcher. You're only impacting a team, to a degree that is minuscule compared to a position player.
What do you think ends up happening with Aaron Judge? You think he's going to return this year, or is this it for him this season?
Man, I did that game, unbelievable catch, and we were just talking about the one guy that the team cannot afford to get hurt is Aaron Judge, and unfortunately, that ended up being that play. I hope he comes back, but I hope he doesn't risk coming back for the sake of playoffs. This is not an injury where you sit there and go, oh, it's no big deal. Like, he can push off. No, this is essential. This is anchoring. This is pivoting. This is the kind of the way hitters hit. And so hopefully he's able to return because the New York Yankees desperately need him. It's a totally different team. I said this, and I'll go on record again saying what he does for the Yankees is what Barry Bonds did for the Giants when he transformed a basic lineup that, again, with all those things being considered, he still changed the lineup before him and after him into a nightmare for pitchers. And that's what Judge does for the Yankees.
John, we're looking forward to seeing you next week at the All-Star Game and then dominating, of course, the American Century Championship. Birdies and bogeys.
No pars. I love that strategy.
Yeah.
No pars. I'm going with that dominating birdies and bogeys. And if we're going to win, let's just lap the field, I guess.
Yeah, and you're not going to leave any putts short. Just go for it. I want to see a putt that goes 30 yards past the hole. Is that –
well, the one thing we got to stay away from is double bogeys because that's a minus. And that's the one thing – you stay away from double bogeys, you got a chance to win.